G'day, Nina. How are you?
Good, thanks, Andrew. How are you?
This is the last week that Nina will be doing it this year because she's going on a postponed honeymoon.
Yes.
Good luck.
Yes, I'm very excited. It feels almost nostalgic. As I was walking into the office, I was like, the last thing I'm doing everything.
And this is our second last for the year. So we have one more next week, and then
Oh.
we're going to have a break, and we'll be back at the beginning of February. So you better enjoy it today. And you certainly got to enjoy Nina's Day because there's no more Nina, all right?
Yeah, so you enjoy Kim and you next week.
That's it.
Nice.
Yeah, well,
Because it's been you for a couple of
me,
weeks.
Moon.
Yeah.
It's been a whole lot of people, but there you go. Why don't we jump into the Heidi Black case?
Oh yeah, this one was crazy. Like it was. I can't believe they went through it. So essentially, this.
I want to know how you learn you've been terminated by your payslip. That I reckon is the high point of this case.
Yeah, but like it's just crazy because she was the chief people officer. It's not like it was a lowly role.
Let's cut to the facts.
Yeah, okay. So she had a verbal kind of altercation with one of her staff and left for about 4 months, I believe it was. And then after she returned to work, her bosses brought her in and said that she provided an unsafe workplace for her team and brought out all these examples of things that she had apparently done. Like she'd been dismissive of one of them. She apparently said, "Oh, you should dismiss them" when someone made a complaint.
No proper investigation.
Yeah, she did not agree with any of these things, and they never just told her she was fired. She just got pay slips that had termination payments, and she'd been there for 7 years with an unblemished record.
And they wondered why they lost.
Yeah, it was just crazy. She'd been promoted like 3 times. Like she was one of the best performers.
Oh my God! But look, can I just say to you that what the commissioner came and said at the end is, look, these didn't warrant termination, but yeah, there was things that deserve caution, that deserve coaching.
Yeah.
Actually, intervention is what it needed, was somebody to go, there's something going wrong here.
Yeah, I feel like that was the most obvious thing. Like when you read the facts, you could be like, oh, there's something not right.
There's something not working here.
There's something going on.
Intervene.
Yeah.
And safety law would say you must intervene at that stage. And we don't. The two of us giggle about this because we play across the divide. But how often do people who do just the workplace relations part, not the safety, not understand that by the time you get down to this toxic explosive stage, you've missed all the psychological hazards which allowed a very simple and clean intervention, which would have fixed it.
Well, it was ironic because the commissioner was like, they clearly misused the word unsafe. In fact, I think the way they treated her was unsafe.
I know. Come on, let's get on to same job, same pay.
Oh, this one it's a new case.
It's a new case, but JBS. So this is about meat processors. This is about labour hire providers looking across a range of JBS sites and saying we want an order across the sites. And JBS,
so all to be under one agreement. Yeah.
And JBS quite correctly say, look, we're not against the idea, but the words of the legislation don't permit 10 sites. They relate to a single enterprise and a single site. AIG have intervened as always very helpfully.
But so the issue here was the fact that each of the 10 sites already has separate enterprise agreements.
Yeah, and so what you can't do is look at it as a whole. That's what and JBS are right in that, by the way. The Australian Industry Group are just jockeying around to try and find relevance. But at the end of the day, I think JBS are right, and if they're not, somebody just can't read the legislation, because what JBS say is, and they're actually acting as a model litigant. They're saying, we don't mind if that's where we take us, but this is what the law says. Where you've got an enterprise agreement, single, the pay that goes across, it relates to that enterprise agreement. You can't do it across 10. The answer is very easy, which is to unwind and make an application for all 10 and not have a silly argument, but that's not being done. So we'll hear the determination of what the clause means at the end of the day. But interesting bit of law, and I've got my money on JBS. Now we're going to talk about local government and single interest bargaining. This is a really interesting case because the two councils share boundaries.
But maybe Andrew explain what single interest bargaining is.
Okay, single interest is where
it's not a common thing, and I feel like I had to Google it as well.
Did you? Okay, there you go. Well, single interest bargaining is where you can say across a variety of enterprise, we'll just have one enterprise agreement. And
they're usually connected.
And they're connected in some way, whether it's the nature of the profession they're in, whether it's physical, whether it's the same types of roles that sit within it. They're usually covered by one or more unions who cover the same roles in each one. The reason we're putting this in is this is not an exciting case, unless you're actually one of the councillors. Is this is coming to private schools, this is coming to hospitals, it's coming to a whole range of places where the changes in the legislation are not quite understood as to the full impact that unions will use to aggressively pursue this, because unions are reducing in size and financial outcomes. What they want is as many people as they can put, like the old general awards used to be.
To make it easier.
So they're really going back to the old award days of saying, well, let's collect all these respondents to award and make them subject to the same thing, because then we become an expert in it and we have a greater membership across it. It's easier for us to service.
But isn't this similar to multi-bargaining? Like, what's the difference?
Well, it's very, very similar to multi-bargaining, and it really has, this is the step before you can do it. Okay, so once you can show there is a single interest that exists, you're allowed to go and then drag in a number of different parties. These are two councils. They have similar positions. They are a relatively similar size, and they share a boundary. And they argued that, look, we've already started negotiating with the A&M. That's, I think, I can't remember which.
And they tried to start bargaining with Professionals Australia, who declined because of ASU.
Yeah, because the ASU wanted to do the two together. I think the Commissioner took a rather narrow view of what the bargaining was with the ANF to say, we didn't really say it was against a single interest.
Yeah, you didn't specify what
the only reason we're bringing this case is multi-bargaining and using single interest bargaining methodologies are now available. Unions are doing it because they don't have the money to actually represent individuals anymore. They want to be the experts, so if they can have one enterprise agreement that covers many, it makes it so much easier for them. They get higher levels of membership, better levels of advocacy. For you as an employer, you're brain dead to agree to it, because the answer is you lose control over your own enterprise and you end up with what necessarily becomes more bureaucratic to cover higher contingencies.
And it might not be the best practical fit for your organisation.
It won't be. Yeah. It won't be, because what you end up doing is agreeing to these sort of buffer clauses to cover things which don't really relate to you.
Yeah.
So keep your head up and don't do it, but it's coming to you.
Yeah, the unions are definitely using it, and I saw recently in the news, ACTU is seeking even more changes to make it even easier to
because there's no money. The unions are going broke. If you look at it, CFMEU, AMW, they're all living off their capital. They're not actually making money through fees. So this is the only way that they can actually get back into a financially solvent position and act for their members. And the ages between 40 and under are not joining unions. Okay, they don't engage in unions. They don't believe in them. So they're dealing also with an aging workforce. So to get back through the door, they've got to act for larger groups of people, which is how the General Award started years and years and years ago. Anyway, that's enough of that.
Crazy.
Slater and Gordon.
Oh, yeah. So this one was
always
really
good to see a plaintiff law firm taking a whack, I think. But anyway, that's...
Yeah, but I feel like this one, it was so weird. It's not been decided. So the case is, they've just only filed the defence. So basically, the chief people officer was terminated because Slater and Gordon found there were significant underpayments. I think it was like 300,000.
Yeah. And what the argument really comes down to, what was the level of authenticity and how early was the disclosure made? And there's a suggestion that the chief people didn't do it the way it ought to have been done.
Also that she'd been dishonest in informing the board. But she's going whistleblower. She's saying that I raised it and said, I think this has been deliberately done and that people are trying to hide it. And that's why you're firing
me. Right, you're after me. Now, look, we won't know the facts and we probably never know the facts, because it'll definitely settle, because nobody in their right mind would let this run. But the reason I'm telling you about it is I think the days of covering up underpayments are pretty well over. Now, there is a methodology around determining how you actually manage it, and that's a discussion for another day. What I do want people to understand is organisations are now fiercely defending their brand where there is an underpayment. And if somebody who is in a position of knowledge fails disclosure, you will become cannon fodder. you'll be thrown under a bus because the organisation wants to say, no, we found out this, we acted straight away.
Yeah, but also it would be dumb to do that because of the wage theft laws that are coming in next year. You would be personally criminally liable.
I know. And look, that's the reason we put it on, isn't it? It's really to talk to a larger theme that what we are finding because of the complexity of it, enterprise agreements and awards and the use of modern payroll systems, which are relatively seem highly sophisticated but are actually quite concrete, is that it's very common to have underpayments that nobody can see because everyone trusts the payroll system captures the complexity of the awards. And of course, awards are only as complex as the work environments they apply in and the recording of time. So getting a great payroll system doesn't change the risk. It means if it's run in a proper way, where it's interventionist and it's testing and checking, good. But the payroll system itself doesn't prevent underpayment.
Mhm.
It's the way you enter data into the payroll system that prevents it. Anyway, really interesting case, and it's only just started, and I feel for all the parties who are involved in it, but we'll know more soon, but I suspect it's going to settle. All right. I reckon this is a great case, this next
I
one.
do too.
This is Modco Homes. This is, interestingly here,
Do you want me to talk through the facts?
I think you're better at the facts than me.
Yeah, this is one of my cases.
This is one of your cases.
So basically, there were 3 incidents. So the first one was
all notifiable.
Yeah, that's the main point. The crane operator had
See, I got the issues. All right.
Had left the crane unattended with the remote as well and went on a toilet break. The crane skewed and hit the side of a building. Didn't notify. No one told anything to the regulator. Then the second incident was they were trying to lift 2 skip bins using the same crane, and the crane hook fell down 5 stories. Didn't notify.
Don't notify. Nothing happened.
And then the third incident, that same crane operator who's involved in all 3 was trying to get the crane hook, and he was standing on an unprotected ledge. So stupid. So nothing happened, and the only reason
anonymous tips.
Anonymous tips. It was through anonymous tips because of all of the issues that were concerned. And the crazy thing is, they had a system in place to address all of these things, but the employee was misbehaving and not following it, and there was no enforcement thing. Had they notified the first time, none of this other ones would have happened.
Say, this is me who put the case on, and I did it because our discussion later on about following policy. And the difficulty with this is when you've got a system that tells you what is right.
Yeah.
Then you breach notification 3 times. Yeah. Then you're dead because all the regulator has to come in and say is there a safe way of doing it? Oh yeah, here's the system. It says how you do it.
Yeah. Right. And people are trained and they know and everything, and you did nothing about it.
And nobody got hurt here, but they got fined $225,000 being stupid.
Yeah.
Now look, I mean, can I just say that $225,000 is a lot of money, but the bottom line is that for this person working in a commercial setting could be fatal for all government contracts.
Yeah.
Okay, because it is a notifiable incident in respect of all government contracts that work as well, and could well and truly exclude you from further government deals. So you set up a policy because it saves you from harming someone. You then notify when you make a mistake and you follow policy. And you're likely safe in your government contracts. Don't worry about the fine. You actually have a viable business. But if you disclose this to the government panel,
which you have to do,
then there is a high likelihood they'll say, look, you're a really dangerous person. We don't want you on our side.
Yes. And I think we constantly talk about safety cases where, there were things that were a bit more out of control. This could have been prevented. This is actually one that they could have prevented a lot of these things.
And so is the next one. So let's go on to that. Again, we've got a case where there's a residential construction site where a wall failed.
Yeah, and seriously injured.
Prohibition notice was issued.
6 weeks about a different wall.
But that's the critical part. So they brought the expert in about that wall.
Yeah, and we're like, done.
And then thought, would we check the other walls? No. And then someone gets impaled and nearly dies as a result of the same type of failing. You can just imagine what the court thought about that behaviour.
Especially because they didn't even show up to court.
I suspect that might be a solvency issue, but anyway, that's a different issue. So proceed as a plea of not guilty, and they just proved their case. But yeah,
$400K and
50 for the director. Yeah, crazy stuff. But once again, obvious, when you have a failing that deals with infrastructure.
Because you're aware of the risk then.
Yeah. Can I just say, in a couple of years' time, this will be go to jail
Mm.
because the regulator's starting to ramp up its level of prosecution. This is the bottom end of where it should be. In 2 years' time, this will be reckless endangerment.
I reckon if there'd been a death, there would have been jail for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, look, we've got Dion's case, which is the case about overturning a improvement notice.
Thanks, Greg, for this one.
Yeah, thanks, Greg Splatt, for setting us through. Can I just say, there would be a number of people who would revel in this and say, oh, principal contractor's not liable. Well, for those people, can you just read the case?
Yeah, that's not
just
what it says.
Read the case. So this was an injury which was caused effectively by the subcontractor and the actual injured worker in relation to a trench. And an improvement notice was issued to the principal contractor, not to Carhills, which was
like the
subcontractor. So a couple of things about this. One is it was revoked when the matter was challenged in the Industrial Relations Commission because the inspector didn't have any proper knowledge to make it.
Yeah, they made no reasonable inquiries and just assumed.
it. So it failed for that reason.
Yeah, that is the key reason.
It failed because, of course, it should have gone both the subcontractor and the principal contractor. But this is not a case where the principal contractor didn't enjoy control because the swing's attached to the principal contractor. Had the evidence been properly put in to the notice, which says, look, principal contractor has an overview of supervising the site. This was a high risk activity that was being undertaken.
And it was like this highly specialised knowledge that the principal contractor didn't have.
Yeah. But the nature of the risk that sat there would have required, and you could have issued an improvement note of the principal contractor to ensure that the subcontractor did X, Y, and Z. So this is a case that falls away from the normal principal contractor case, highly specialised case. As we've all said in those, it's harder to gain liability around the principal contractor. But once something happens where the supervision of a site for a high risk activity exists, where there's common knowledge as to the nature of that risk, the principal contractor is liable, and therefore the improvement notice should lay against both the principal contractor and the subcontractor. This was a lazy WorkSafe inspector failing in their job, and that's what the court said.
It's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah. So look, don't get excited for those people who love saying principal contractors have no liability for the actions of subcontractors. It is a total nonsense anyway, but it's also nonsense in this case, just in case anyone's worried about that. I just thought I'd finish that off just to make it clear so we don't have to deal with it again. Now, this is Nina's favourite case.
Oh, this is so
This is liver damage caused by alcohol as a result of a physical injury or a person self-medicated. Have I got the facts right?
3 bottles of wine and a carton of beer each day.
And what's wrong with that?
After he was fired because he
I do that every budget time.
That's ridiculous. And then he brought a claim seeking compensation for the damage from his alcohol addiction.
And he won.
Yeah, and they appealed it.
Not that silly. Not that silly.
Like, that's crazy. The idea that you could fire me and then I just choose to turn to alcohol and drugs and then you have to be compensated for that, that's ridiculous.
No, I agree. Don't do it.
Oh, God.
I'm not going to fire you. Not if you're going to go and do that. It'll cost me a fortune. But look, remember the subjective test that sits inside of the side of workers' compensation legislation, which basically is if you suffer an injury, as a result of that, your personal circumstances lead you to doing something that causes you further damage, including drugs and alcohol, it is likely that it will be compensable. The argument here is he drank just as much beforehand, not something that was teased out in a great deal of minutiae during the case, but unquestionably his use of alcohol was caused in part at least, or a substantial cause, of an injury for which he couldn't get respite from the pain he was suffering.
That's ridiculous. So where do you draw the line then? Like,
well,
is it a temporal thing? Oh my God!
Come on, next case. Come on.
It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous case.
Oh my God!
He won. I'm not going to do much on the next thing, which is the anti-vilification protection laws. I will send out a copy of our summary of it for you.
Yeah, thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Tom. But it does show that the vilification laws extend to other protected attributes.
Yeah, I think it's just bringing it more in line with federal legislation.
Yeah, and it criminalises it in a much more easy form. But we'll send that out with the next link so that you can see what it is. It's not law yet, but unquestionably it will be law in the future, and it goes to the heart of how we're training people as well. You go to the main topic?
Yeah, main topic.
Main topic. this would be my favourite subject, I reckon, is having a good policy and then not following it. Or even worse still, shooting for a policy which sets incredibly high standards of what you say you can do when you can't do it.
I think that.
And that's really what we see more often is somebody hires a smart consultant, well, maybe not so smart consultant,
and
who
it always got to comply with the iOS. That's my favourite.
Yeah, which is 7,412 pages long, just so you know, I read your last email, and which nobody can possibly read, let alone lift up.
Yeah.
But it does set out a series of things you can do to prevent injury, which in fact, factually, you can't. But it is evidence, unequivocal evidence of what you say is reasonably practical. So when you don't follow it, you are definitely liable. Now, that's not this case. This was where there was good policy, which wasn't followed. And maybe you can talk us through the facts a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I think this is not a unique case because the type of injury is so common. So basically, the lady was feeding lot through the auger, and she tripped. She tripped, and then she tried to brace herself, and then her hand went into the auger and chopped off 3 fingers.
And the policy here talked about the guarding of the auger. There was a guard on the auger.
They removed it.
But they removed
to fit it into the position, and the officers of the company knew about it.
Yeah.
And she'd been doing it for ages with it being unguarded and everything was fine. And they had told her, don't go near the auger. But that's not sufficient. Like, I don't think she did anything wrong, it's just...
No, but in fact, they knew there was a high likelihood of tripping there.
Extreme likelihood. So...
Why do you always take it one step further than me? I don't...
Because it was extreme. An extreme
likelihood. You wrote it.
I didn't write
it. Extreme likelihood. Okay, extreme likelihood. Anyway, can I just say that older plant, which does have things like augers, which have sort of loose-fitting guards that people take off and on, like it's just bad science. There are such huge risks around motorised equipment, particularly augers. Here there was a decent policy which, had it been complied with, the regulator I thought was pretty lacklustre. It didn't dig too deep in this.
No, it could have been way worse.
Yeah, in fact, the Victorian regulator, had it have seen this with the ones we deal with, I would have suspected it would have been a much more serious prosecution. So I think everyone got away quite lightly on this matter. But this is a case which goes to the very heart of the issue. Rule one is create a workmanlike policy and procedure that everyone can understand and follow and does prevent the risk of harm.
And people have to be trained in that.
And competent, demonstrated
and understand, like if there's language barriers, you should be making sure you address those.
But then the enforcement of it is absolutely critical. And, Nina and I are involved in prosecutions and all sorts of things at the moment where enforcement is a major issue, and failure to enforcement with good policy has created liability. This is the sort of stuff we deal with every day.
Yeah.
But too often what we get is the crazy policy which creates risk which can never, ever be enforced, written by a consultant who has nothing to do with the business. We're dealing with a matter at the moment where actually there's some really good, sensible, hands-on policy. If we had complied with it, we would have had no risk at all. So I want you to think about it. Workmanlike, simple, practical policy that's very clear, easy to understand by everyone who's dealing with it, good enforcement, good education, good competency methodology. Even if something bad happens, you will not be liable.
Yeah, I think that's the key point, because often people say to me, but it was the employee doing the wrong thing. But if you don't have those checks in place, that you make it easy to understand, you're enforcing it, then that's not defensible. But if an employee goes out of their way to get around all those things, then WorkSafe would never prosecute you because you've done everything you reasonably can.
That's right. So the topic today, I guess, is a bit of an axe to grind for both of us, which is get the policy right, get it understood, get it competent, get it enforced. You won't actually have any injuries. That's the start of it. But should something happen, you've got a complete defence.
Yeah.
But please steer away from these crazy policies created by people which are hundreds of pages long and take you nowhere, just create liability. Why don't we go and try the problem for today?
Yeah, we've got to hurry.
Yeah, we've got to hurry. We do.
But I think it's a shorter one too.
It is a shorter one.
Yeah. Angel wanted to work from home. The entire admin team worked flexibly. Policy made it clear that you must be at work for a minimum of 60% of your working week, unless you had a flexible work agreement or specific written authority. Angel had a 7-year-old child named Destiny. Her husband Titus already worked full-time from home and was a self-employed accountant. He always kept Destiny during the work week. Angel started working just 2 days a week. She arranged her attendance around meetings, and nobody noticed as no one kept a record of who worked when. But it didn't take long for her boss, Gammon, what kind of name is that?
Street urchin.
To notice.
That's what you know what Gammon is?
No.
Street urchin.
Performance and availability.
You only ever got to ask me with the names I put in there.
Angel had started dropping off and collecting Destiny from school, which meant that even on her work days, she was late in and left early. Destiny was a special needs child. She had some learning disabilities which were known to her employer, but Titus had always managed this. Gammon met with Angel and explained that she needed to be at work 60% of the time, walking her through the drop in her attendance and performance. Angel was irate. She pointed out the work practices of every other person in the admin team and asked why she was being singled out. Gammon explained that the rules were the rules and her performance and availability had declined when she started working more flexibly. Angel responded that she had a special needs child, which he knew full well. She also explained that Titus needed a break, that as family they were struggling, and that it was impacting Destiny. Gammon acknowledged this but formalised the process with a written warning for breaching the policy.
All right, does Angel have a workers' compensation claim if a doctor says her treatment caused her psychological injury? The answer is absolutely yes. Okay?
This is such a common scenario now with work from home policies, these things.
Yep.
It's a good problem.
Is the apparent poor organisational justice around attendance? Now, remember, of the 14 elements of what are psychological hazards, organisational justice, how you treat people fairly.
And if you treat some people differently to others.
Yeah, so do you think here it was a psychological hazard?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, can I just say, as Nina said, the reason this problem is being agitated a bit today is we've probably got half a dozen matters over the last few weeks which deal with flexibility in work and how it's being managed.
Yeah.
And I want you to remember this is at the heart of it. It creates such angst when someone looks across the desk in the next cubicle and sees someone hasn't come in for 4 days, and yet your boss is saying you've got to be there, and you go, how does this work?
Yeah.
Would Angel have a discrimination or general protections claim? Sorry, not general practice, but that would be a general protections claim.
Yes. She probably has a general practice claim.
Sure is one of those as well. But look, did she have a protected attribute?
Yeah,
yes.
Caring responsibilities.
Caring responsibilities.
And they were aware of it as well and acknowledged it.
Yes. The issue really here is, particularly under Victorian law, the test is so easy to be discriminatory, and under changes in federal law as well. What I want you to understand is she is raised and people knew of her issue. The fact that changed over time because of her husband. Once she disclosed it, what you had to do was stop, listen, reflect, and work through it. But by formalising the warning, you've hit it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding that people have to raise it through a flexible work request in order to raise it. That's not the case. The fact that she's disclosing it to you means that your red flag has to pop up and realise, hey, this is an employee who needs further support.
I need reasonable adjustments. Yeah. What's the reasonable adjustments? And then consider that.
Yeah.
And have we got any other questions? I don't know if we do. We do. Yeah. Would the treatment of Angel be a proper basis for a union official to enter without notice on the basis of a psychological safety? Yes.
Without notice?
Yeah. It was a significant hazard. She becomes incredibly distressed. People are being treated differently. There's a lack of psychological safety in the place.
But without notice, I don't know. It's not like tomorrow she's going to do something. I think they can give the 24 hours notice.
Well, I'm just saying they would. They would use that now, and they are using it now under the new entry rights, and saying, no, psychological safety risk, it's imminent, required right now, I'm going to go in.
But how can they justify that? Because it's not like if they waited 24 hours, anything else
because there's an imminent risk of injury. That's the argument.
And they're just pushing the boundaries.
Well, they are pushing the boundaries, but the answer is, with a greater awareness of psychosocial safety and hazards, it's hard to argue against it. Whereas with physical safety, it was much easier to argue about.
The risk.
So I think you can push back and say, well, look, I'm happy to talk to you about what has occurred, but there's no reason to speak. It's one person.
Yeah, and then we've put these supports in place or whatever. Yeah. If she put the warning in dispute under the Enterprise Agreement dispute clause, would her warning be removed by the Fair Work Commission, assuming it had power to arbitrate?
Absolutely.
Whoa, that is left to feel.
Well, no, the reason, once again, we don't have the sharpest unions that we used to have, but 15 years ago, this would have gone in dispute straight away.
For a warning?
Yeah, for a warning. Particularly in a unionised site where you have maybe 60 to 70% membership and they were really challenging and trying to get leverage, they would put it in.
crazy.
So I just want you to know there's more remedies out there than what we think there is. And if you go to your disputes clause, you'll see there is a right to put in dispute any performance or disciplinary nature normally, because the unions have gradually been changing the model to get it that way.
Yeah, so maybe have a look at those clauses and
That's
get
what
them
that's what I'm asking you to do.
adjusted.
Okay. Now, Nina, you have a great honeymoon.
Thank you.
Enjoy the world. Tell me
Thank
what
you.
Japan's like when you get back.
Yeah, we'll do. All right, everyone. Well, because I'm going to tell you, Merry Christmas and Happy New
Yeah,
Year.
and thumbs up.
Yeah, give us a thumbs up.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.